If you ever wanted proof that the designers and builders of pinball machines don't want people working on their creations, you don't have to go any further than trying to remove the thing box from an Addams Family Pinball machine. It's got everything wrong with it. Screws are buried, you've got to take pieces off to get to the screws that are buried, and there's no room and it's hard to get light back there. But I have found a couple of tricks that'll help not only getting it out, but the even harder job of getting it back in. Here's how we do it. First up, I recommend removing this plastic strip that runs along the top of the machine. The space under here is very tight, and anything you can do to increase the amount of room you have to maneuver will be appreciated later. It's held on with 5 wood screws, and when you pull it off, don't be surprised if there's a crack running along the full length of this wood. In fact, when I took mine off, these 2 screws pulled right out. There was nothing holding them. And the reason this happens is that this is a piece of particle board glued to the bottom of plywood, and the screws go in right at the joint. So it's very common for the screws to split that joint. If that happens, work some glue into it, clamp it up, and you'll have that problem fixed. Thing box is held in place with 3 screws, 1 on either side and 1 in the back underneath this plastic. We need to remove this plastic first thing. To do this, use the cutouts on either side to put a Phillips screwdriver, a small thin one, down to engage 2 wood screws in these locations, but at the bottom. The one on the right, this one, you just want to loosen up so the plastic's not held down tight. That one we're going to slide the plastic out from underneath. It doesn't go through a hole in the plastic. The one back here is actually a screw that goes through a long post. That one we need to loosen up just enough so that you can lift the board. The screw will stay in the post. And that's that. I recommend starting with the right-hand screw first. There's more room in here, it's easier to see and easier to get to. Unscrew it about halfway. You don't want to take it all the way out or it's going to fall down and possibly in the machine. Just get it loose enough until you can feel the box moving to the side. Then we'll go for the harder left side. I find it real helpful to use a dowel, or in this case a small screwdriver, to wedge the lid over to the right a little bit. It gives a little bit more seeing room so you can see what's going on. Get a Phillips screwdriver and unscrew the screw on the side. If you have a thin enough, small enough screwdriver, you don't need to loosen up these plates to get in there. Don't take the screw all the way out. If you do, it's going to fall down in the machine, and you know what that's like. Instead, just get it about halfway out and then do a test lift, and if that side feels loose, you're good enough. Once the 2 side screws are loose, reach around the back and there's a tab with 2 holes in it. One of those will have a screw in it. Undo that screw, again only halfway, to release the back end. Don't be surprised if there's no screws in the back. It's common for the installers not to put those screws in. Start by sliding the box as far to the right as possible. Then what you need to do is lift it up and flex this side of the bottom of the box to the right enough so that it clears this Playfield plastic, like that. Then just widget it out. Be careful that you lift the front end first and kind of pull it up this way. And the reason is there's a small wire bundle that rests on top of this flange. And if you try to pull it straight up, you could stretch and even break those wires. And that's it. The box is out. You can now apply a decal if you want and give Thing a manicure if he needs, because he does tend to get a little dirty. What we have to do then is reinstall the box, and it turns out that's even harder than getting it out. I recommend installing the Playfield plastic first. The reason is that the post that goes down, that guides the screw into the wood, is very difficult to get around this cable once the box is in. So get that installed and just get the screw started so it stays in place. You don't need it tight. A little flexure back there will help. Next, I recommend covering the top and the bottom of the screw holes with some electrical tape, something stretchy, something that'll hold screws. Screw the screws through it about halfway. What this does is it holds on to the screws so that while you're fidgeting the box back into its hole, they don't fall out and fall into the machine. Okay, and here we go, the hard part. Move the cable up so that you can get the flange underneath it. I find it works easier to move the right side in first. And unfortunately, this is just a matter of fidgeting around until you can get it in place. Make sure, before you try flexing the left side in, that the bottom of the box is inside that flange right there. If it's outside, like that, it's not going to flex enough to get past this playfield. Ah, made it. Now I wish there were some magical clues I can give you as to how to get it in there. You just have to play around with it until you can flex the bottom left side in enough to get past this playfield plastic. What you could do is loosen up this nut back here, and that lets this flex a little bit, but you're going to need to have this move that way to get that tab past this, and there's no place for it to go. You could try taking this unit out, but these screws are real hard to get to, and there's a cable right in the way of this screw, and this nut gets in your way, so these are very difficult to get out and even harder to get in. I recommend just fiddling with it until you can get it back in. So all we have to do now is put our screwdriver in, tighten those screws up, and we're ready to go. Oh, another thing, I did not put in the rear screws. They're a pain and they're not really needed. If you think about how this flexes, you just need the front screws. The rear screw doesn't really do anything. I hope this video was useful to you, and if you ever need to take your thing box out, you have my sympathies and my wishes for your best luck. In the meantime, I hope you'll visit my main website at waynsthisandthat.com. I actually have about a dozen pages dealing with the Addams Family Pinball machine, and you might find that interesting. Thanks for watching.